Hey, everybody. My name is Stephen Cutchins. I'm the Senior Product Manager for Accessibility here at Cvent, and this is Accessibility and Event Technology, a Beginner's Guide. It's a two-part webinar. Part one will last about an hour. That's going to be me. I'll talk about high-level accessibility concepts. Then we'll break for about 10 minutes, grab some coffee and a snack before part two, when our other accessibility experts create some event pages and turn on screen readers to show you what the experience is like for your attendees who have disabilities. I'm really excited about this. I hope you stick around and enjoy it. To go over a few housekeeping items, on the right side of your screen in Attendee Hub, we have our AI-generated closed captioning tool, Wordly. You can join the chat, you can submit questions in Q&A, and we'll be answering your questions during and after the presentation today live. Please also fill out the survey. We appreciate all feedback so we can continue to give these hopefully great webinars. You can also register for any upcoming webinars on the right-hand side as well. To download our slide deck, click the details link on the bottom right, and the full details session link. Here is the Global Accessibility Awareness Day website at accessibility.day, where all of this started. I want to thank you all for dedicating some of your valuable time and committing to learn a little more about how we can improve the lives and experiences of our attendees with disabilities. With that said, welcome to Cvent's second annual Global Accessibility Awareness Day celebration. I am absolutely thrilled at our progress. A year ago, we did this, but it was internal only. It was just for our employees. Pretty good turnout, but again, it wasn't open to the public. This year we are. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us. Our accessibility program last year just started. Honestly, it was just me. I joined here to create this program. Now we have an accessibility task force within our quality organization. We have an accessibility guild for our software engineers, and we have what we call accessibility champions throughout the company within our products. That big accessibility wheel is turning a lot faster here at Cvent, and I couldn't be happier. Figure we're going to spend an hour together, so I'll let you know a little bit about me and why I'm insanely passionate about trying to improve the lives of people with disabilities. My mother was an amputee. She lost her leg to cancer when I was about 7 years old. They had to remove it at the hip, try to prolong her life. I remember doing things like trying to hold the doors open at the grocery store, being a little, 7-year-old kid. This was in the 70s. This was before the Americans with Disabilities Act said things like grocery stores have to have those auto open doors. She died when I was 8. So what I did is spend summers for a couple of weeks every summer with my aunt and uncle. They had 2 kids with cerebral palsy. Both of them were in wheelchairs. One of them was unable to speak, so it was nonverbal. So every year it was Disney. We would load up in that big full size. Remember, this is the 70s. That big full size blue minivan with the big window in the back. We would load it up and we would go down to Disney because that was the only place the kids in wheelchairs could go. That has changed now, thankfully. I also have a neurological disorder called Tourette syndrome. You might notice my various muscular tics and twitches. Most know about Tourette's because of something called coprolalia. Coprolalia is where people may excessively or uncontrollably make sounds, guttural sounds, grunt, use inappropriate language. Only about 10% of people with Tourette's actually have coprolalia. I do not. Rather disappointingly, Tourette's has the highest level of bias by hiring managers because they think that everyone with Tourette's syndrome has coprolalia. Over 30% in a survey of hiring managers admitted to not being willing to hire someone with Tourette's. They admitted to not being willing to hire me. And that's just the hiring managers that admitted it. That was 30%. Which is why I've dedicated the last 18 years of my professional career to accessibility. It's all I've done. I try to help companies create their accessibility programs. And thankfully now I'm at a place that has completely embraced it and I love it. On a personal level, I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie. I like to keep myself busy, high energy stuff. I was a paratrooper in the Army. I was a rock climber. I even competed. That's not me, but you get the idea. I was a motorcycle racer. That actually is me on a track. I crashed that bike. I miss it to this day, but I still have fond memories. Tried to get my 2 kids into motorcycling. They did it for a little bit, but really now my daughter, who's now 13, she does volleyball. My son, who's now 16, he's on the JV soccer team in high school, but at least they're active. And now no more motorcycles. Most of my time is spent riding and now racing bicycles. That's me. I wish I could say I was on the first step of the podium. I was third. That's as good as it gets. But I'm working on that. So let's get into our presentation. Enough about me. Accessibility is why we're here. Before, let's step back for just a second and talk about disability and what it actually is. So, a disability, prevents someone from doing certain activities or interacting with the world around them. We tend to think about the big things: fully blind, fully deaf, in a wheelchair. What about what about issues learning or issues remembering or things like mental health? Although, and I'm going to do air quotes, people with disabilities sometimes refers to a single population. It's actually a very diverse group of people with a wide range of needs. It can have things like mobility issues, self-care issues, dressing. Two people with the same disability can be affected in very different ways. Some disabilities may be hidden or not easy to see. According to the World Health Organization, there are three dimensions. There's impairments, which are full loss of vision. There's activity limitation. That's things like difficulty walking, difficulty with self-care, and participation restrictions. These inhibit social and recreational activities, things like attending events, which is why we're here. This isn't a small number. We're talking 1.3 billion people globally, or about 16% of the world's population. In the US, the numbers are a little bit higher. We're actually at about 26%. In the UK, it's about 22. I don't know the number for Japan. I bet it's higher because as we age, those numbers go up. So accessibility, digital accessibility, is merely making our electronic content, our websites, our software programs work for people with disabilities, often by use of something called assistive technology, or AT. AT is any piece of equipment, software program, or product that's used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of a person with a disability. I could rattle off 50 of them, but prosthetics, switches, keyboards, pointing devices, screen readers. There's one here, JAWS. Most people have heard of JAWS, or job access with speech. It's that kind of robotic voice. That's a form of AT, or assistive technology. Um, Eye gaze, head trackers, walkers, you name it. These are all forms of assistive technology. Assistive technology, it helps people who have difficulty speaking, typing, writing, remembering, pointing, seeing, learning. I could go on. I love this slide because I always want to include that some people don't know where to begin, or they think that accessibility is a moving target or kind of up to interpretation. What is it? Yes, Virginia, there are standards. Cvent follows WCAG, or WCAG, WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 level AA. There's actually single A and single double and triple A. We follow 2.1 AA, as do most US and international companies. So, give you a little bit of spoiler alert already, but who benefits from accessibility, and how? I want to point out real quick that these are concepts, kind of some higher level examples. Some of these, for you planners out there, these might be things that are out of your control. I really want us to understand the basic concepts of this, not necessarily dive in deep just yet. Some of these may be reliant on something you can do. It may be reliant on us as a software company, things that we have to do. Please stick around the second half of this webinar. We're going to go over things that planners, when you're creating sites, specific things you can do to aid accessibility for your attendees. We're going to give some screen reader demos. So we're actually going to turn on, like I mentioned, JAWS. We're going to turn on some screen readers and actually show you the attendee experience for your employees as they use your site. And we're also going to have a software engineer on to explain why those things happen. I think it's going to be really cool. Hope you please stick around. I think you're going to like it. We're going to show how kind of the software can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you planners, because you're pretty busy. I wanted to include this quote. This is a letter to Mr. Rogers he received in the early 60s, okay, the 1960s. It was from a 5-year-old blind girl named Katie. She asked Mr. Rogers to say out loud when he was feeding the fish, because she couldn't see. She was blind and she worried about them. I thought it was sweet, and I just want to say, let's all please try to be like Mr. Rogers. It's interesting how this was the 60s and we're still talking about things like captions today, though. All right, visual disabilities. They could be, I'm blind, I might have limited vision so I can see, but not very well. I might be color vision deficient or colorblind. CBD, they also call it. This is a pretty big number also. We're talking 8% of men. It's only about 0.5% of women. So this is my poor joke about like men don't dress nearly as women. 8% of us have some vision or color vision deficiency. I could have cataracts, glaucoma, age-related macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy. There are a lot. I could just get an eye injury. There are a lot of things that could affect vision. So let's talk about some roadblocks and solutions real quick. So the roadblock is pretty clear. I can't see your content. I have to use a screen reader or a braille display. I'm unable to visually follow the mouse cursor, so I can't use a mouse. I must use keyboard-only navigation. I'm unable to see what's happening in videos. I require audio descriptions to understand that video content. I can't differentiate red errors from any other text. This is for 8% of colorblind men. You must use words to describe your errors. Things like first name is required. I have difficulty seeing small fonts or small controls. Just don't use them, or I use browser zoom and magnification programs so I can see better. Okay, let's go some pretty high level examples. The old click here link. So here we have some links on a page. There's text, says, register, and then colon. There's a link that says click here. What's the problem? Well, when I'm a blind user or a user has to use a screen reader, I use the keyboard to navigate through the page, and I tab to go to my controls, to go to my drop-down fields, to go to my links, my buttons, right, radio buttons. When I tab, I only go to the controls. I don't read the text. So the problem is when I tab through this page, if there's 20 links that say click here, I hear click here, click here, click here 20 times. I don't know where here is. So I'm forced to use my arrow keys is how you read non-text, the text. I'm forced to read around and try to find where here is. Why not instead make the link the name? So instead of register and then click here and create an account, click here, make it register link, create an account link. That way when I tab, I hear register link. I know exactly where here is. I know where I'm going to go. It just makes more sense to me. Here's another one, the more link. Here's a cool paragraph about the Cvent supplier network. And then there's a link that just says more. Well, if I'm tabbing through the page, there's a bunch of articles and I hear more link, more link, more link. Again, I'm forced to read around to try to figure out where more is. Why not make the link learn more about CSN? It makes it that much easier for a user, and it doesn't make it any harder for when we're creating our sites. Errors shown in red. So on this page, I was filling out a workflow. I forgot to add my first name. So when I click submit, the border changes to red. Now I'm lucky, personally, me, Stephen, I'm not color vision deficient, so I can see that border changed to red. Well, as a user who's colorblind or color vision deficient, they might not be able to tell the difference. And a screen reader, it doesn't say for somebody who's fully blind, doesn't say, hey, hit the brakes, a field changed to red. No, they don't know. So notice that red's okay, but instead of just doing red, also add some text. In this case, we put first name is required. So that way I go through this page, I click the button, and I'm like, oh, wow, visually I can see first name is required. I know I screwed up. Plus, as a screen reader user, when they tab through, assuming the software like ours is coded correctly, you'll hear first name and then first name is required to let you know. There's other things we do in the background, which we'll explain later, but you'll know that, hey, this field has an error. You've made a mistake. You have to fill this out correctly or add the information and then go down to the page and resubmit. This was actually one of my favorite. I've heard multiple times people call this the aha moment, the good old status icon. Here we have our red, yellow, and green circles. This could be status on a report. It could be you're sending an email and you're highlighting your comments in yellow. Somebody else will highlight theirs in red, somebody else in green. You get the idea. But it's just colors, okay? So somebody who's color vision deficient, they can't tell the difference, right? Well, why not? And this is a status report, but why not also do shapes? So in this case, it's a status report. You can still have red for bad or green for good, but don't just have that. Instead, have a red down arrow or have a green check mark, or if it's okay, a yellow little sideways arrow. To go back to the one about the email, you can still, my comments are highlighted in blue. You can still preface that. You can still do that, but preface it, my initials are say SRC. So I'll preface it with bold SRC : or SRC comments or Steve's comments, and then I'll highlight it in the color so it's not just color. By the way, here's someone who's fully colorblind sees this, how they would see this. So clearly you can see on the left, the yellow, maybe it's a little bit lighter. The red and the green, forget about it. You're not going to notice a difference. And imagine if there's a blue, there's a purple, there's more colors. But this isn't just websites. Here we have a name tag in an event, these color-coded breakout groups. There's the purple group, there's the red group, there's the green group. Um, this is cool, it looks nice, but it's only color. So why not also have the name of the color on the badge? You can, even if you don't like the look, you can put it on the back. But that way, somebody who's color vision efficient, they don't just have to rely on the color itself. They can flip their badge up and go, oh, green, I'm the green group. Pretty cool. And again, here it is for somebody who's totally colorblind or color vision deficient. They wouldn't be able to tell the difference between these three at all. Poor color contrast. So I mentioned earlier those WCAG or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. I mentioned that those guidelines are what we follow. In WCAG 2.1 AA, they say the text to background should be at least 4.5 to 1 for normal size text. This yellow and green here, I'm lucky, I'm not color vision deficient, I don't have poor vision. I use glasses, although I'm not wearing them right now. But this is only 2.7. I'm lucky, I can see it. It's not great, but I can see it, but it should be 4.5. What I did though, to give it better contrast for those with limited vision or colorblind, I changed it to, you can still do the green, say this is some kind of status report. I changed it to black text. So now instead of 2.7 background, it goes up to 7.3. And here's actually a link we'll share. This is a link to those WCAG guidelines. The organization that creates this is called W3, or World Wide Web Consortium. There's the link to contrast. And we do try to make it easier on you. When we create our Cvent products, we try to incorporate as much of this guidance as possible in. Here's a screenshot of our Attendee Hub designer page. The planner on this site chose what is that, like a pink on red, a terrible color contrast. We actually have a built-in accessibility checker that says, hey, hit the brakes. The color you chose is bad and why. You can override it. So if a planner says, never mind, I'm going to keep this pink on red, which is awful, they can still do it, but at least we let them know why and that they shouldn't. We're going to give a live demo of this in our second hour, so please stick around. Image alt text. I think a lot of people have heard about this. They're just really not sure what it is. So our AT, or assistive technology, screen readers, braille displays, it identifies controls, but it cannot interpret images. So planners, when you add image to a site, you have to specify what's called alt text or alternative text. So screen readers and assistive technology know how to describe that image for users who can't see it. It is not a literal description. Let users know the intent. Context is everything. I got that from a quote. I'll give you the link. But often less is more. We're talking 2 to 3 short sentences. Sometimes it might be 2 to 3 words. Again, context is everything. Mark decorative images as such. So if something's on a page just to look pretty, it's pretty for the people who can see it. The person using a screen reader, they don't care that I'll give you an example in a minute, that it's a picture of a flower just to make your website pretty. So mark it as null alt text for you software engineers, alt equals open quote, close quote. And this is that there's a WebAIM article, webaim.org, great article about alt text. That's the one I got the quote from, context is everything. And lastly, just to give you an example from our page before, the alt I picked was Attendee Hub theme page showing an error that color contrast is too low. I didn't think that it's important to show pink on red or what the contrast is or that it's a type right at the page. The intent is Attendee Hub theme page showing an error, the color contrast is too low. That's all I needed to put, one simple sentence. Talk a little bit about alt text and context. Alt text and context being everything. It's hard to say. This is ragweed. Boo, hiss. We all hate ragweed. That's why my eyes are watering. And I live in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm kind of the west of Washington, D.C. And it's, pollen season. Yay. So this is a disgusting ragweed, that disgusting flowering plant. If this image was on an allergy site, I would probably need to know about the pollen count and how ragweed can produce 1 billion pollen grains per season. If it's on a TV manufacturer site, I'd need to know about maybe the vibrant colors of yellow and green. And if it was just used because it was pretty, no alt text. So again, context is everything. From a pollen site to a site that uses it for the colors to just decoration. That's what's important. And we do enable you, this is our event website designer page. We do make these fields required. When you go to add an image, it does say it's a required field. Boy, that's awfully small, but we give you the option. And in this one, by the way, the alt text we picked was a gentleman looking at a laptop viewing a virtual event. I don't care that he's wearing a hat. I don't care that he's looks like he's drinking a coffee. I can't quite see the screen small, but the important part, looking at a laptop view in a virtual event. By the way, we'll cover that in our second hour also. Hearing disabilities. Hearing disabilities could be, I'm deaf, I have a severe hearing loss and require hearing aids, or I just have mild hearing loss and have difficulty catching every word you say. I myself actually have tinnitus. My ears ring, especially my right one. Sometimes it's very, very bad. I got the shingles vaccine when I turned 50. I woke up the next morning. Yay, lucky me. My ears were ringing and it's never stopped now. And I had the whole test, and there's a certain frequency range where my hearing is the worst. But unfortunately, things like events when there's a lot of background sound, that's the worst for me. So, yeah, lucky me. Way to pick the events industry. So hearing disabilities, some roadblocks and solutions. I'm unable to hear system prompts. You have to either don't use system prompts or also provide visual clues in addition to those audio prompts, audible prompts. I'm unable to hear voices in multimedia presentations. I require captions to understand spoken word. I'm unable to hear relevant sounds in multimedia presentations. You must include sound effects and captions. The one about this is there's a documentary on tanks, right? If a tank goes boom, I should see the word boom in those captions. I'm unable to I'm unable to communicate verbally in person, during meetings, over the phone with your help desk, during interviews, you name it. I may require sign language interpreting, speech to text, some mobile apps. I'll show you a cool example later. So, captions. Here's this really nice, interesting podcast about Cvent Connect 2021 from 2 years ago. I have no idea what the speaker's saying. Closed captions allow everybody to understand. Think about the last time you were like sitting at a bar or sitting in an airport and they had a TV on. There was no way you would understand what's going on unless they have captions. So some of these things, these accessibility issues, the accessibility solutions help everyone. I always like to mention, does everyone know OXO? Was it OXO? OXO Good Grips, the can openers and the kitchen tools that have the larger hands. Those were larger handles. Those were initially designed for people with arthritis, so for people with disabilities, and now it's their number one selling product line. Live captions and sign language interpreters. Here's a live event like this one. It's the same issue. I have no idea what the speaker is saying. Not only does this live event have live captions like we do, we also have a sign language interpreter, again, like we do, that relays not just the spoken word, as you can see on her face here, the emotion that the speaker is exuding. I'm going to talk about this a little bit in a couple, coming up slides. The help desk. Have a problem? No problem. Pick up the phone, give us a call. What if I can't hear? Phone is fine for users who can hear. Also offer an email, also offer an accessible chat. I personally love live chat. It feels kind of more responsive. I feel like there's a person, although lately it's been all AI, we know about it. But then again, it's the same when you pick up the phone. But don't just offer phone. Somebody who can't hear, that's not going to work for them. And apps are great. They allow you to facilitate a conversation with someone who is unable to hear you. On a prior team, I had members who were deaf. He was my office mate, actually, and we use Microsoft Translator constantly, very, very effectively. There's an option to start a conversation. We can each use our phones. Everybody now carries a phone. So I would be able to speak into it and he would be able to type it, and we were sitting on our own phone, and we could be in the office. We could be in the same, walking around the building, not even in front of each other. We were on doing a conversation with this, like, hey, where are you? Do you want to go to lunch? Let's grab a cup of coffee. Okay, great. Works really well. It also works for language translation. For your events, especially like, say, your registration desk people, I would strongly urge having this pre-installed on your phone. You never know. It's free. Have it installed. It's really nice. Strongly recommended. So to go back to our sign language interpreter slides from a couple ago, think about a book versus a movie. A movie shows emotions and details. That book is kind of just the words. You have to leave it up to yourself. So AI captions are good and getting better as they learn. Human captions are better. That's where a person actually types it in. They can kind of make corrections. My example is my last name is Cutchins. So it could be Hutchins, it could be Cutchings. I've seen it a lot of different ways. A human will know how to spell it and they'll spell it correctly. Sign language interpreter is the ultimate because they relate those details, those emotions, not just those words. Um, Remember that not all deaf people, though, know sign language, so you also should have captions. Again, go back to that book versus a movie thing. The interpreter kind of shows emotions that you just can't get from a book from live captions. For your in-person events, remember that the people who need a sign language interpreter, and I'd also say the people who use captions, they need to see. So you'll see this if you go to accessibility related or disability related conferences. They always have the front row reserved for the people who need the sign language interpreting. Strongly suggest you do that. We'll talk about how you identify some of your attendees later. Um, Behind the sign language interpreter, kind of minimize that background. You want to do really, it should be a dark, as it shows here, it should be a dark or black background. Make sure they're well lit at all times. If you close the lights off in the conference room, make sure you don't turn it off for your sign language interpreter. And know that not all deaf people know sign language, and there are many types. I believe actually over 200 types of sign language. So, so yeah, so remember that. And just to give you an idea of the accuracy of these I read those first couple of sentences on this. This was Google Translate on my phone. It was good, but notice instead of AI, it says, hey, hi. And AI is the important part. I was talking about artificial intelligence. And all the time became all the count. So it's not perfect. All right. Physical disabilities. Being unable to use a mouse due to a physical disability. I can't use a mouse or keyboard and I have to use a sip and puff device like this gentleman here in the background. I'm elderly and my hands, I get tremors, my hands shake. I lack fine motor control, so I can't control the mouse. It's hard to click those small radio buttons and such. Or simply, I broke my arm skiing and now I have to wear a cast, so I have a temporary disability for the next 6 weeks while it heals. So some roadblocks and solutions. A spoiler alert, I talked about this. I can't use a mouse at all. So we have to make sure that all controls, buttons, links, radio buttons, checkboxes, form fields, drop-down menus, I could go on. Every control has to be both accessible and usable by keyboard, and that I can visually track focus. Now, granted, this is not on you planners, this is on us, on a software company or on a website, but this is critical. Lack of keyboard accessibility is the #1 accessibility hard stop roadblock. If you have content on your page or controls that are not accessible by keyboard, your users with disabilities, two different types, both keyboard users and fully blind users who use screen readers or braille displays, they're done. They can't access your site. I'm unable to perform complex keyboard commands. The things like Control Alt Delete, basically just don't use those crazy multi-key commands, alt this, insert this. Luckily, they don't really use this as much anymore. I require space for my wheelchair. So we're talking about physical disabilities. My wheelchair, my service animal, my white cane. Imagine somebody in a wheelchair with a white cane, who's fully blind and a service animal. They need space. So consider access for the service animals in the office during interviews at your events, etc. So some mouse-only controls. This is kind of more informational, especially if there's any software engineers on here, but these are some common controls we found that tend to work really well with a mouse, not necessarily with a keyboard. Things like calendar controls here, these cool JavaScript calendar controls. Things like tooltips, the little I informational tip, these custom drop-downs. I'm going to put a challenge. I please everybody on here, I would love for you to do this. Spend 1 hour a week. I've heard of companies called No Mouse Monday. Let's say No Mouse Lunch Monday. Pick an hour, try to do your regular work. Send emails, reading your websites, going on CNN, or log into your bank. Just use the keyboard. No Mouse Lunch Monday, let's say. Spend an hour just to experience what it's like with somebody with a physical disability who can't use a mouse. I think it'll be pretty enlightening. I'm hoping it'll build a little bit of empathy for your keyboard users, for your attendees. I'd love some feedback about that, by the way. Another thing is focus indicators I want to show. Again, this is really on us, on the products, but I want to give you some examples. So if custom focus indicators are used, remember that they have to show for both mouse and keyboard. So here's a continue button When I both hover over it and tab to it, it does that nice blue outline. Here's another one. Here's a form field, a first name field, shows a blue outline again. I thought this was cool. I got this from an accessibility site. I think this might have been that WebAIM, the one that had that context as everything. But I like where they do a black outline, but they also do it in color, so it even makes it more visible. Right now, there are no guidelines. So I mentioned WCAG 2.1. There are no guidelines that specify focus. They are coming out in WCAG 2.2, which is due, I've heard this summer, but let's say by the end of the year, I hope, that will have guidelines for focus indicators. And we at Cvent, we're already researching 2.2 and working with our UX team of how to show a consistent focus indicator. So some examples. Again, this is for you software engineers out there. When you're designing your components, make sure that that click target is large. It makes it easier for mouse users, and also it allows it to show larger keyboard focus. When you're using explicit labels, sorry, there we go. When you make the click target, in this case, not just that tiny little radio button, make it the whole form control with a combination of form control and the label. I will mention explicit labels. So using ID and for are natively clickable. So all of that works for the following different form types, input type equals text, checkbox, radio, file, password, text area, and select box. Again, not so much for planners, but you software engineers. So if you're creating a radio button, do the input type equals radio. By default, it will automatically allow you to click not just a small control, but also the full label. Flyout menus. Again, I'm picking on you software engineers out there, but if you create flyout menus like this, they can be difficult for people with a mouse, who use a mouse, and they also make sure they work with keyboard. Sometimes they don't. Here it said designed for keyboard or speech only use. I would like to add a slight delay, because what happens, I'm holding my mouse here, but if I'm taking my mouse and I'm dragging it along and I'm trying to go from 2 to 2B on the left, and I barely brush 3, 3 opens up, that menu opens up, and 2's menu is gone. So add a slight delay. It benefits those users who are lacking fine motor control, but still do use a mouse. Oh, I just said what I wrote there on the bottom. Sorry. I should look at my notes. Here's a nice crowded hallway. So on the left here, we have, this is as you can see, it's a disaster. Can you navigate in a wheelchair? In a wheelchair, what about a service animal? Have it by your side. A blind person with a white cane. All of those are going to be roadblocks for a person. Cocktail tables. So I know you're thinking, yeah, we don't do hallways here, but we do conferences. This is a great looking room. It's beautiful. It's well lit, has these beautiful cocktail tables, nice tall cocktail tables, those pretty tablecloths. What about your attendees in wheelchairs? Their drinks are, I'm using my hands here, but their drinks are going to be up above their heads. So I found these nice adjustable ones. That's an option. You can also have some that are just lower, or maybe a conference table that's lower, that people who are in a wheelchair can put their drink on. Tablecloths are also a problem. Imagine somebody wheelchair rolls by or goes to roll up to one of these. The wheel hits the tablecloth, it pulls them, suddenly they're wearing their drink. Not good. It could be a safety issue also. So for those lower tables, remember that you might not want those nice, flowy, pretty tablecloths. I will also mention that people in wheelchairs, if you have to think about it, if they're talking to other people, I'm looking up now, but they have to look up when they talk. If they have a physical disability or just looking up for a long period of time, it can cause pain. So it's nice to have some lower seating, normal height chairs, couches, something like that, so attendees in wheelchairs can the people that they're talking to can sit down, so they're on more eye level. Offsite transportation. So it's not just web, it's not just events. So here we're going to go to this cool event offsite. Yay, everybody's all psyched out. Okay, get on the bus, load it up. Let's go to this cool event. What about your users in wheelchairs? What about users who have mobility issues, users with service animals? I don't think there's a transportation company out there that doesn't offer this, so please use it. Another shameless plug, and I'll talk about this more, but query your users, ask them what their needs are. If someone says, yes, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. Yes, I have I'll use a white cane. Yes, I have a service animal. Make sure that you offer alternatives to offsite transportation. All right, speech or language impairment. Admittedly, it doesn't impact software all that much, but I want to include a couple of examples, especially for our in-person interactions. So, unable to speak at all. I have a speech impediment, so my words are not very clear. I have ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, and I'm losing my ability to speak. Or I have a hearing impairment that also impacts my ability to speak, especially people who are born blind from, I'm sorry, deaf from birth. So some roadblocks and solutions. Roadblock is I have difficulty accessing those voice input menus on phone systems or conversational speech programs like those little AI chatbots. You can still use them, but provide options for key entry or full menu bypass. I have difficulty communicating with help desk phone support. You have to ensure that help desk is also available by other options, by phone, by website, by a mobile app. I love my mobile apps. I can't talk to the people at your registration desk. Still need to register. I use apps. Now, I've even heard of people just say, just keep a pad of paper, but now with all these mobile apps, they're way easier than writing away on a piece of paper. So, voice input. Here's the good old antique telephone. Person goes to call up and it says, please describe the purpose of your call. That's fine. We can do that. But also give them options for, please describe the purpose of your call or press 1 for whatever it is. Help desk. Here's our help desk contact number again. You have a problem, pick up the phone, give us a call. What if somebody can't speak? Say, or you can also email us, or you can do this live chat. Apps are also great. So just with users who have issues hearing, apps also help people who have difficulty speaking. Again, go back to your people when you're running your on-site registration desk, they're free. So I strongly recommend having these pre-installed. I'd probably turn it on, make sure you know how it works. But it's very easy. Somebody who comes up and has an issue communicating with you, whatever it is, you can pick the app up and show them, hey, I have this installed. They can install it. They probably already do. They can install it. You start a conversation, and you can communicate effectively. No embarrassment, no pause, no stress. It just works. Okay, mental health, intellectual, and learning disabilities. This is new, and a lot of it does border kind of heavily on usability. But as with speech, I kind of want to show some examples. I know I didn't cover a lot with speech, but important thing to note here is that a person without a disability will struggle through your site. I don't have a disability that an intellectual or a mental health or a learning disability. Me, I don't. If I go to a site, I might hate it. It's hard to use. I struggle through it, but I get through it at all. I can get through it. I can make it through. I'm going to be angry. I might need a glass of wine afterwards, but I can struggle and I can make it. Somebody with a disability, when they encounter those challenges, they'll leave your site. They're not going to use it. They're not going to register for your event, and they're not going to come back. So that's the difference between kind of usability and accessibility. I'm on the autism spectrum. I experience depression. I have dyslexia. I have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I could have Tourette syndrome like me. I'm bipolar. I suffer from anxiety. All things that can impact our consumption of web content. And again, much of this heavily overlaps with good design. If it's usable, it should be pleasant. It should be non-frustrating. It should be a good experience for everyone. So roadblock, complex websites confuse or overwhelm me. Solution is don't use them. Use simple, easy to use navigation and layouts. Overpowering use of color distracts me. Avoid bright contrasting colors. Use of complex figures. I'll give you an example, but complex figures confuse me. You can have them if you have to, but use descriptions, include descriptions, write in plain language. These walls of text are hard to read. I'll show you an example again, but where it fills the whole screen. It's just hard for me to process, hard for me to read. Use simple sentences, use bullets. I sometimes feel overwhelmed. This isn't just web. I sometimes feel overwhelmed at in-person events. Sometimes I just kind of need a quiet space to recharge. We all do. So large blocks of heavy text. So here is one where we had, this is a scientific paper, let's say, crammed with information. You may have to do that, but also give images, give diagrams, give supporting text. What do they call that? The executive summary at the top. Make it a little bit easier for people to consume. I will also mention dyslexia. Dyslexia has issues reading, difficulty reading justified text like here, where it's aligned both to the left and the right. Basically, just don't. It might look better, but for some people, that's very difficult to read. Lots of information crammed in one space. So basically don't do it. Luckily we're going away with this. It used to be for a while there where we had to cram these. I think Adobe started it. They hopefully nobody from Adobe is on the call, so I apologize. But there was a screen. It was just packed with information. Looked like it looked kind of cool. It looked neat. Like, wow, we really have so much to tell you. Problem is, it's very hard for somebody with a intellectual learning disability to consume, to understand. It's just overwhelming. So keep it short, keep it clear, keep it simple. Again, this is the difference between it's difficult for me to use and somebody with a disability, they don't use it. They'll leave your website. Don't force me to remember. I think this is pretty cool. Go back to kind of remembering. Okay, so we're in a workflow. I'm a couple pages in. Let's say this is the second page. I fill out a bunch of information. I click next. I go to the second page. I fill out a bunch of information, and I'm about to click next. And my brain is at its limit. I'm like, oh wow, this is hard for me. I'm at my limit. I have no idea how much more work I have to do, and I can tell how much more I'm ready for a break. I don't know how much more I need. So why not make the button say step 3 of 4? Well, now I know I'm halfway done. That took me 5 minutes. I can make it another more 5 minutes. I'm okay. I can finish it before the system times out. I can finish my workflow. I thought this was a cool idea. Another option is, by the way, you can have steps, you can have it written down in text, you can have a progress bar that moves. The key point is to let people know this is how much work you've done and this is how much work you have left to do, so they can decide if that's enough for them or if that's too much for them. Don't make me guess. I love this. I actually saw this on a website. It said, I missed something and I clicked submit or next or whatever it was, and it said, you have errors in submission. Thank you very much. And I know we've all saw this, and hopefully a couple of you were chuckling because I had no idea what I did wrong. I had to dig around the page. It didn't even show errors. I had to dig around the page and try to find out like what I did wrong, or put like a space, and that was a disaster. So anyway, let people know. In this case, I like it. Please correct the following errors. Last name is required. You can have underneath where it says last name is required under the field. This was a list at the top of the page. The most important thing is make it easy for users to use your system. Does sound like usability, and it is, but for some people it goes beyond usability and it affects their however what their type of disability. I need a break. These are just a couple examples of in-person events that you can do. Things like quiet rooms, rest areas, ample break time between sessions. Don't forget nice neutral lighting, and don't use overpowering sound. I was at a training session once. It was I'm a certified usability analyst, and during that training, that 2-week training, the instructor had pipe cleaners on the table. I thought it was cool because everybody's playing with them and fidgeting with them. And he said that research actually shows that if people have something to do with their hands, they learn better, they remember better. It's actually the same reason why a lot of people, when they're taking notes with a pen and paper, they tend to learn better. I think it was pretty cool. So with that said, I know this isn't a whole lot about mental health and intellectual and learning disabilities. It's really a fairly new topic. We still need to do more research on how these things impact people with disabilities. Much more to come. Shameless plug for next year's Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Hopefully I can give some statistics, give some better concrete examples, but hopefully I'll see you next year, and then maybe even the WCAG guidelines will be updated to include mental health and intellectual and learning disabilities. Okay, with that, that's the end of the training part. If you don't mind, I want to do a couple of minutes just to steal some time to show the cool things that we're doing here at Cvent. So VPATs, or Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. It's a document companies use to state their level of compliance to those WCAG guidelines. Once it's filled out, it technically becomes an ACR or accessibility conformance report. Everybody still says VPAT. So we have clients that call me up all the time and say, hey, give me your VPAT. Some say ACR, but normally it's VPAT. So just so you know, excuse me, they're made for you. They're made for our clients. They're publicly available. They're often mandatory for like government, higher ed that receives federal funds, and for large enterprise. Now they mandate this, so it's mandatory for part of a contract, or for a contract. They are created per product. It's a technical document. It will list the defects. It'll list it'll break it out by WCAG guidelines 1.1.1, 1.1.2, all that, and it'll say how we support it or don't support it, or if we have defects, it'll say supports with exceptions, and it'll list how. So it's one per product, one for Attendee Hub Web, one for Attendee Hub Mobile, one for registration. You get the idea. Our VPAT timelines, so far we have them for registration, Attendee Hub Web, Attendee Hub Mobile, which is iOS and Android, and then interactive floor plans. In progress, literally right now, is Cvent webinar and on arrival. And by hopefully end of June, we'll have meetings management and access portal. I think they're going to be combined. But expect new VPATs about 2 to 4 a year, about every 6 months. We contract through an independent third-party firm, an accessibility firm called TPGI. They audit our products, write our defects, float our VPATs. I will mention, if you want to see some of these, I'm going to print them out and have them at Cvent Connect, so you can take a look. And it's kind of nice to see that our efforts are being recognized. We're being recognized as an industry leader. Last year in 2022, we had some great interviews. We had some nice article written about us. We won a couple of awards. We got a MeetingsNet. Thank you very much. We got a Changemakers 2022. Meetings Today also thank you. We got ones called a Meetings Trend Center. I think there were only about 10 people globally that got this, so it was pretty nice. It made me feel proud to be at Cvent. This is from the National Federation of the Blind. They used our products. They sent feedback that there wasn't a great deal to report, and the application was, and I quote, in pretty good shape. NFB is the oldest and largest organization led by blind people in the United States. So pretty good is like World Cup stuff. So that's why I did a little messy with the Cvent on the back, but pretty good from them is, I think it's very, very good. Lastly, please join us in Las Vegas this July 24th through the 27th for Cvent Connect 2023. I'll be there. We have an accessibility booth. I'm going to do some hopefully cool mock registrations as people with disabilities, with various types of disabilities. So you, our planners, can man a desk. I'm going to come up to it and say a blind person or a person who's deaf. We're going to discuss disability etiquette and how to best enable and support your attendees. I'm doing this because admittedly, we get nervous when we talk to somebody who has a disability. Somebody comes up and is blind, for example, you don't know how to interact with them. I'd rather you do it with me in a mock situation than one of your attendees and you get nervous. I hope it's fun. I hope you enjoy it. I think it'll be fun. And with that, I had a wonderful presentation. I thank you. And let's get to some questions. And I do know we had some questions answered during the chat. If anybody has any more, let's be happy to answer. Ooh, where is my mouse? I'm sorry. Is there anything planners or builders should think about for other countries to be globally inclusive? An example, do some countries have other recommendations we should think about that ADA does not? So for web itself is the WCAG or WCAG guidelines. If I could have answered this 5-ish years ago, I would have said all countries do things differently. US, Europe, UK, South Africa. Now, thankfully, pretty much everybody's gone to WCAG 2.1 AA. Really, all governments. UK has a slightly different one. It's WCAG 2.1, but they add one for accessibility of documents. The WCAG guidelines are supposed to be, they call it technology agnostic. It doesn't care if it's a document, an email, a web page. UK went one further because it can be a little confusing with documents and augmented WCAG 2.1 AA to include documents. US is slightly different. We go by, US federal government goes by a slightly older WCAG 2.0 AA. I would still say do 2.1 for everything. And hopefully that answered your question. I see somebody typing. Excuse me. Anything anything planners should do when it comes to mobile versus desktop. So the product has to be what's called responsive. As it changes, another thing called it's called viewport size. So I'm using my hands, I'm sorry, but you have a web page that's this big. When it goes down to a certain breakpoint, it goes into a responsive view. It'll do tablet wide. And then when it goes smaller, it goes tablet tall. And then it goes even smaller, it goes the breakpoint for mobile, what is it called, landscape and portrait. Basically just test it. Thankfully now, browsers like Chrome, as you go smaller, it does that automatically, but there are applications you can use. If you Google like responsive testing or responsive breakpoint testing, there are applications that can simulate how it'll be viewed on the different browser screens, and I would just suggest doing that to make sure it works. It's kind of heavily dependent on the software. So like Cvent products, we test them all, especially ones like registration and attendee hub that are very public visible. We test those to make sure it works, but you can test your site also doing that. Somebody asked, are there accessibility sessions at Connect? I think we don't have dedicated sessions. I think what we're going to do is, apparently there's a breakout room. I've never been there. I'm brand new to it. I'm excited. But there are kind of these breakout rooms. We want to be able to do just periodic, and they said like 3 or 4 screen reader demos of our products. Oh, not just screen reader demos as an accessibility person with a disability, so accessibility features of our product. So we'll go in and use a keyboard. We'll go in and turn a screen reader on. Any of the booths will happily show you things like keyboard, but for the screen reader ones, come see me at the accessibility booth, and I'll actually turn it on. It's in the innovation. Yeah, somebody just put it. It's in the innovation pavilion. I'll be there at Cvent Connect. I have 2 big like towers in front of me, and registration desk and everything. So come by and play. Hope you enjoy it. Somebody asked difference between Google Translate and Microsoft Translator. Translate is just that. All it does is read what's on the screen. Microsoft Translator is the one I showed that it has the little, what's that called? The conversation button. You can start a conversation with somebody else, and if they have it installed, it actually brings up a QR code. They can scan it with their Microsoft Translator app, and you join a conversation. So I can, for example, my office mate his name was Joaquin. I could get on my phone and talk to Joaquin, and then he would see it pop up on his phone, and he could type back with me. So Translate is, I've seen people use, matter of fact, I've used Translate. In a conference call, it's nice. I won't compare the AI or the accuracy of them. I think they're both very good now. Google seemed to be a little teeny bit better. If anybody from Microsoft is on, apologies. But if you're just using it to translate, Google Translate maybe is a little better. If you want to communicate with somebody, I think Microsoft Translator is the way to go. Seems to be a little better. I have them both installed. This is a great one. There was one about that I need a break slide. What would lighting, sound, those rest areas look like? They used to call them prayer rooms. So to become a little more inclusive, we started now just calling them kind of break rooms or rest rooms, not restrooms, sorry. I need to take a restroom. Think about what would make you kind of chill out and relax. It could be beanbag chairs. It would be comfortable lighting. I would not do things like scented candles. Some people have allergies, and remember, somebody might go there with a service animal, and dogs are what, 1,000,000 times more sensitive. I saw once, it was at a conference, they had moderated sessions every hour that somebody would go do and just do a moderated meditation session every hour. I thought it was pretty cool. But basically, just somewhere with this kind of quiet, dim lighting, like your old prayer room. You could, matter of fact, prayer rugs. That's another good thing. I would have prayer rugs because people still can use these for prayer. Something like that is just somewhere that's kind of quiet, and I need to let my brain take a break. Everybody might use it, but especially helpful for people with like neurological disabilities. Okay. I kind of covered this one, I think, a little bit, that we follow WCAG 2.1 AA. There are others. Really, 2.1 AA is the global one now. Again, if I could have answered this like 5 years ago, I would have said there's a lot of ones for other different countries. Really, everybody does 2.1 AA. UK, for you folks, if you're on a call, there is an EN, I should know the number, but there's a European one that it adds on about document accessibility. But really, 2.1A, if you follow that, you're going to be good. All right. At Connect, there's this innovation pavilion. I'll have a table that'll say accessibility. I'm going to have a screen running in the background. I'm going to just show some disability etiquette slides. With that said, I think we're good for a 10-minute break. We are going to show some disability etiquette slides now. So, if you want to stick around, take a look, we'll give about a 5 or 10-minute break. After that, we're going to have, I really hope you stick around. It's going to be very cool. We'll do some product demos, actually turn some screen readers on. We have a software engineer on who's going to explain why these things work, why we do the heavy lifting for you. So yeah, I'll see you guys in about 10 minutes. Enjoy the music and enjoy the slides. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed those slides on disability etiquette. We'll share those afterwards since you may have been off getting coffee and a snack. It's my pleasure to introduce Ron Justice, Evelyn Whiteman, and Tim Foley. You may have met Ron before. He does a lot of our client demos. Evelyn is a quality engineer, and Tim is a software engineer. They both work on accessibility of our products. I covered a lot in that first hour, and it might seem a little bit daunting. The good news is that our software handles a whole lot of this for you. Now, Ron, Evelyn, and Tim are going to show you those things that you need to do as a planner to make sure your content accessibility, as well as the majority of things that are just done by our software. We do that heavy lifting for you. And also what the experience will be for your attendees with the disabilities. We're actually going to turn on a screen reader and do some demos. Now, because we're doing screen reader demos, we pre-recorded this section to make sure we stayed within time and make sure there weren't any glitches. But we are online live answering questions in the chat. I hope you enjoy this session.
Hi, my name is Ron Justice, as Stephen mentioned, and I'm a principal solutions consultant here on our enterprise sales team. Now, Stephen went through a lot of information on why accessibility is important and how that relates to meetings and events that you're going to be hosting in Cvent. I'm going to be actually reviewing some tips and tricks that you as an event planner and organizer can use to create accessible sites for your invitees using the Cvent platform. The great part of this is that a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done behind the scenes, so I'll be highlighting the planner interface, and then my colleagues Evelyn and Tim will be showcasing the overall attendee experience. Now, hopefully we don't need to go through and double click on why accessibility is important, but you do want to go through and ensure that all of your invitees and attendees are able to have an optimal experience. It's a great way to deliver your message, power human connection, and ensure that everyone is able to attend. What you're seeing on my screen right now is the planner interface of the Cvent platform. So if you're a familiar user, hopefully this does not look any different. What we're going to actually do is take a peek behind the scenes and jump into the site designer. Now, a site designer is actually used to be able to develop the website and registration experience, and we use a similar look and feel also when we're talking about their email communication. Within the site designer, we understand that it is so important to be able to promote your message of the overall event to your invitees. And so you can see the branded look and feel is going to be still available for you to be able to go through and leverage. When we go through and start talking about this idea of designing your event website, you want to make sure that you're considering accessibility as a main important part of that component. You could see within the header experience that you can actually go through and consider using images that contains graphics and not too much text. And we'll talk about ways that even if you are using a graphic or an image, how you can go through and leverage screen readers to be able to describe that. Specifically, when we talk about images, if you're going to go through and use your image as the overall header, you now can see on the right hand side under the HTML heading tag, and you may not have noticed this, but this allows for you to be able to go through and identify that this image should be used as a header from just a positioning standpoint. Now, in addition to talking about images, you can also go through and see a section called alt text. This is used to provide an optimal experience for attendees with screen readers, and planners should consider using this text. Essentially, without alt text, the images are completely invisible to screen readers. So, when writing alt text, you want to consider the intent of the image. So, you can see here in this example, maybe there's a man or a woman in a navy suit jacket speaking to a crowd versus keynote speaker Jane Doe. Now, Stephen talked a little bit about this, so I just wanted to quickly mention this and how easy it is to be able to go through and add that alt text. And these are small things that you could be doing to enhance the quality of your event. Now, when we started talking about the Attendee Hub, for those of you who are not aware, our Attendee Hub is our post registration engagement platform that's in the form of a mobile app, but we also have a virtual desktop. This is going to allow for you to be able to engage your attendees on site, behind their computers, or for your hybrid events. And that same Attendee Hub designer experience, you can now see when I click on Manage Website and App, it'll take me into several components that you'll be able to easily go through and edit. We're going to be focusing on this section here in the design section, so you don't have to worry about too much. First, within the theme section, and this is something that Stephen pointed out earlier, colors and themes, it's very important. I believe Stephen mentioned that 8% of men actually have some type of colorblind or visual impairment compared to 5% of women. Still, that's about 13 to 14% of potential attendees. So you do want to make sure that you're always thinking of that theming and branding. You can now go through and see within the color scheme, this will allow for you to be able to easily go through and select your colors. And if I were to select an incorrect color or a conflicting one, there would actually be a proactive message shown to you as an event planner and organizer, instructing you of that and that you may want to consider changing it. When we go into the attendee website, you'll also be able to go through and not only add your images, but also identify is this going to be an image that should be used for decorative purposes? And if it is not an image that should be used as a decorative purpose, consider using that alt text so again, this can interact and engage with screen readers. Again, small things, but again, can make a really impactful experience to making sure that your events are inclusive. Lastly, I'm going to highlight the email designer. Emails are a very important part of your promotional aspect and campaign for your meetings and events. And so, leveraging these tools within Cvent can ensure that every part of the event, as possible, is accessible. Within the email designer, we still feature a drag and drop experience where you can add different components, such as the images and adding your alt text. So, again, wanted to go through and quickly review this overall experience. Headers, images, and alt text can still be found in this section. What I'm now going to go through and do is let you see the overall attendee experience. And so I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues, Evelyn and Tim, who will really be able to showcase this a little bit more.
Thanks, Ron. Now that you've all seen how we help guide you towards accessible event experiences on the planner side, Evelyn and I are going to demo the attendee experience, showcasing a few of the ways that someone can use assistive technology to navigate around and interact with your event pages. Before we get to talking about screen readers, let's consider the keyboard experience. This is an exercise that all of you can start doing right away on any site. If you're used to using a mouse, try navigating a page using only the keyboard. Using Tab to move forward, Shift Tab to move back, and occasional arrow keys, you should be able to use menus, links, buttons, anything that you can interact with using a mouse. As Evelyn navigates the page, she can tell where she is because everything she focuses on receives a visual outline. All browsers have a default style for indicating focus, but it isn't always this easy to see, and can change dramatically between browsers. We've implemented custom styles on focus indicators to make them more consistent, accessible, and for a more branded look.
This is how someone with a motor disability like painful arthritis or hand tremors is able to navigate a page. If a website is fully functional using only the keyboard, then they'll be able to access the same content as everyone else. Now, you'll notice as we get further down this page that there are a lot of moving elements. For some people, that's a fun, lively page, but for others, it can be kind of overwhelming. Moving content with no way to pause it can distract some neurodivergent people or people with cognitive disabilities, making it hard for them to stay focused on what they're doing, or even read text on the page. Some animations, like parallax effects, can even cause vertigo and nausea.
That's why it's best to keep animations to a minimum if you can't offer a way for the viewer to stop, pause, or hide them. We still give you the option to upload looping GIFs to Attendee Hub, but be mindful of their potential to distract. You'll have to use your own judgment there.
We've talked about color, motion, and keyboard. Let's talk about screen readers. Screen readers translate a visual user interface into words that can be understood with no visuals. That's a really hard job because our interfaces convey a lot of information visually. Take this heading. Because it's big and bold and at the top of the page, I understand that it's the heading for the page. It's telling me what to expect this whole page to be about. Similarly, these other little headings are labeling sections. So how can a screen reader communicate that to a blind person?
In our code, we've marked up each of those pieces of text as headings with a corresponding heading level so that the screen reader can convey that page structure to the user. At this point, Evelyn's going to start up a screen reader to show you how that works. She's using NVDA, which is one of the most used screen readers, and it happens to be free and open source. We also test our pages with JAWS, the popular Windows screen reader, and VoiceOver, which comes built in to all Macs.
Here's a chart of all the headings on the page, sort of like a table of contents. There's the Welcome Evelyn heading at the top, and then all the other headings nested under it. This is why using the correct heading levels is important, so this list accurately reflects the structure of the page. If I navigate through the list, NVDA will read the headings out loud.
Tree view. Welcome Evelyn expanded 1 of 1 level 0. Level 1 welcome video. 1. Learn more about Blue Corp 2 of 10 level 1.
I can also pull up a list of all the landmarks, buttons, form controls, or landmarks on the page, or links on the page.
This is one of those areas where we have to work together to ensure an accessible experience. As long as you format your headings with the style options that we give you in Site Builder and Attendee Hub, we make sure that all this structure is encoded automatically. Try to avoid manually increasing the font size or just making things bold by hand, because that visual nuance will not translate to screen readers.
To help you understand how people use screen readers, let's step through how a blind attendee might navigate this page. Keep in mind that different people use different tools in different ways, and this is just one example. Also, people using screen readers don't generally use a mouse, but I'm going to click a couple things just to get us to the
Future
right place.
Technologies Conference document. Menu button collapsed sub-menu schedule.
Great. So if I've never been onto this site before, I might start at the top of the page and read everything once so I know what's there. As you've seen, I could also use headings or other semantic reference points to get where I want to go, or get an idea of how the page is structured. But let's start at the top of the page.
Home visited link. Schedule menu button collapsed sub-menu.
So because that button says collapsed, I know I can interact with it
Expanded.
to expand some more content that I can then navigate.
Sessions visited link. On-demand link. Upcoming events link. Speakers link. Community menu button collapsed submenu. Expo menu button collapsed submenu. More menu button collapsed submenu. My schedule button collapsed. Notifications 3 unread notifications button collapsed.
Notice that even though these buttons don't have any visible text, we've given them accessible labels so that the screen reader can tell the user what their purpose is.
Messages button collapsed. Evelyn Whiteman button collapsed. Clickable. Main landmark heading level 1 welcome Evelyn.
So because I can see, I know that the screen reader just skipped over that whole banner that says Future Technologies Conference.
This is where alt text is really important. Now, that's something that Stephen and Ron both mentioned earlier. Whenever you upload an image that includes text, be sure to add that text as alt text for the image so that the screen reader will know how to describe it to an attendee, and they won't miss out on important information.
Main landmark. Slide 1 property page be victorious in virtual event link. Slide 2 property page resources cvent.com opens a new window link. Our products cvent.com opens a new window link.
It's okay that these images aren't getting read out because they're really just there for decoration. There's no important information to convey that isn't presented in that link text already. So in that case, it's sufficient and it's okay for the screen reader to just skip past it. That's an example of a decorative image.
Okay, so we've looked around the homepage a bit, but say my friend told me about a great session and I want to go look at that. I remember seeing a sessions page in the navigation menu, but I don't want to shift tab all the way back up there. So let me pull up that list of windows again.
Elements list dialog.
I want to look at landmarks this time.
Type. Grouping. Headings radio button checked Alt plus H. Form fields radio button checked Alt plus F. Buttons radio button checked Alt plus B. Landmarks radio button checked Alt plus D.
Landmarks are a tool that we can use to mark up the main regions of a page. This information is invisible to sighted users, but they're especially useful for helping screen reader users quickly get around to different parts of the site. Here you can see there's a banner landmark with a sub-landmark of navigation. That's the navigation bar up above, as well as main and content info.
Tree view. Main 2 of 3 level 0.
So it's showing me the landmark that I'm on right now, which is main. I know navigation is usually at the top, so I'll hit the up arrow.
Level 1 navigation 1 of 1.
And there's navigation.
Banner landmark navigation landmark list with.
So here I am in navigation. I'll go through and find the sessions option.
Schedule menu button collapsed submenu. Expanded. Sessions visited link. Home. Event. Skip over navigation links visited link.
This is a skip navigation link. So instead of tabbing through all these navigation links again, I can hit this link to skip down to the main content of the page, which saves a lot of tabbing. It will disappear once I follow it, because it only shows up when my keyboard focus is on it. That way people using a keyboard or screen reader can use it, and it doesn't get in the way of the overall design when it's not needed. These skip links are actually more common than you might think. Next time you're on your bank's website, for example, try pressing tab a few times and you'll almost always find a skip link waiting for you.
Main landmark heading level 1 session list search by name, title, or company edit search showing 20 sessions heading level 2 Tuesday, October 20th, 2020 list heading level 3.
Okay, so the screen reader is trying to read everything in the main landmark to me. But I just heard that there are 20 sessions in this list. I don't want to hear all of them individually. Let me see if I can filter these results. A filter section should have a heading, so I'll look for that.
Elements list dialog. Tree view. Level 0 main 3 of 4. Type. Grouping. Landmarks radio button checked Alt plus D. Links radio button checked Alt plus K. Headings radio button checked Alt plus H. Tree view. Session list expanded 2 of 2 level 0. Level 1 speakers 6 of 6. Level 0 filters expanded 1 of 2.
There it is.
Complementary landmark clickable filters heading level 2.
Let's see what filters exist.
View all filters button. Clickable heading level 3 date. Button expanded hide date filters. Checkbox checked all dates.
Okay, I know the session I'm looking for is on the morning of the second Wednesday, so I'll try filtering for that.
Tuesday 10/20 checkbox not checked. Wed 10/21 checkbox not checked. Tuesday 10/24 checkbox not checked. Wed 10/25 checkbox not checked. Showing 7 sessions, checked. Checkbox checked, clickable heading level 3 time. Button expanded hide time filters. Radio button checked all times. Radio button not checked morning. Showing 3 sessions, checked.
Great, I can deal with 3 sessions. So let me get back to that sessions list.
Elements list dialog. Tree view. Level 1 time, 1. Level 0 filters expanded 1 of 2. Collapsed. Session list expanded 2 of 2 level 0. Main landmark session list heading level 1. Main landmark. Search by name, title, or company edit search blank. Remove 10/25 filter button. Remove morning filter button. List with 3 items, list with 1 items, keynote session, new technology link.
And that's my session. So now I can go through the description to learn more about it. I'll skip through that quickly so you don't have to listen to the whole thing.
Chris Hodges will kick off. Technologies will impact the tag group list with 2 items, big data. Virtual session. Out of list button, add keynote session, new technology session to your schedule.
Perfect, so now I can add the session to my schedule.
Notice that when Evelyn hovered over that or focused on that button using NVDA, visually we see that the button just says add, but NVDA read out add session, keynote session, new technology. So it had a little bit more information there. One of the ways that a screen reader user can navigate is do something like pull up a list of all the links or buttons on a page. And if you just saw a list that said add, 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 that wouldn't be super helpful. So again, behind the scenes, we've made sure that that button is encoded with a little bit extra information so that if you were reading this as a list of buttons from a screen reader perspective, you'd see add keynote session or add morning remarks. Each of those would be distinguished with a label that we put in the coding behind the scenes in that button, whereas visually, it just says add. So thank you for watching our quick demo of the screen reader experience. Hopefully we've given you some insight into a few of the ways that attendees can interact with your events and how we are working together on accessible event experiences. On our end, we've made sure that everything is coded behind the scenes following best practices and industry guidelines. We regularly test and audit our own products and also make changes based on feedback we receive from you and your attendees. You've also learned that there are opportunities for you as planners to make good decisions that will make your events more inclusive and expand your audience. This includes writing alt text for screen reader users and marking up your pages with the heading styles that we provide. At Cvent, we're committed to accessibility. We're always looking for ways to make our products more accessible and easier to use. And as such, we really appreciate your feedback. So don't forget to fill in that survey at the end of the session. In addition, we're working on knowledge-based articles covering today's topics in more detail, because we know that that was a lot to take in just one afternoon. So next, we'll be switching over to our live Q&A session where all of us from the presentation will be here to answer any questions that you might have about Cvent and accessibility and accessible events. So thank you all. And thank you, Evelyn, for the demo.
Hey, everybody. I know there was a lot of stuff going on with that software and screen reader demo, huh? Headings, landmarks, drop downs, so much cool stuff, but virtually none of it needs to be done by you planners out there. That was kind of our intent of this. Our software does a lot of that heavy lifting for you. So with that said, if anybody has any questions, we're here to answer them. I'll read these out loud. Does screen reader technology come with the option to vary the speed, intonation, and et cetera of voices? The monotone of the demonstration is really challenging to follow. And I wonder how that impacts working memory / audio processing comorbidities. Two-part answer. The one is the second one, you can update voices, but I've personally done a lot of usability testing and accessibility testing where I sit next to somebody who's a screen reader primarily blind. And I mean, I've spent hundreds of hours sitting next to somebody running a usability lab, watching somebody use it, and pretty much everybody uses the standard voice. I know it sounds bad, but I think people get used to it very quickly. The first part, though, you can pick different voices, though. There's male, there's female, there's higher, there's lower. The first part about the speed, very much so. You can slow it down when you're a beginner. You can also speed it up insanely fast. I've used screen readers for almost 20 years now, and I tend to do the standard rate or a little bit above. Blind users, they who've been using it for years and years, it goes so fast I can't understand anything. So yes, you can speed it up. Yes, you can slow it down. Beginners slow it down. Once you get advanced, you're going to speed it up a lot. You'd be amazed how fast they can read a screen.
Yeah, I'll also add that the voice you heard in this recording was not, it got a little crunched up in the audio processing. So the default is a monotone, but it's a smoother sound than you got on this demo.
Excuse me. With all the changes being made in Cvent to improve accessibility, if we duplicate a previous event from 2022 or earlier, will those updates be reflected in the new site? Or do you recommend we create a new template with the newest of features? Kim, you want to take this? Maybe talk about our component library a little bit?
Looks like Tim is muted. But I can talk a little bit about just like the process of like how you're going through and duplicating events. So there is opportunity once in the component library and Cvent to go through and add things such as like alt text at the account level. So when you're going through and duplicating an event, essentially you're creating an exact carbon copy of that experience. If you have images that are done in the previous event and you're copying that over, that image along with that alt text will be present, and that's going to be manipulated within that site designer experience. So you do have the ability of going through and making sure that you're able to utilize those features, but the biggest thing is making sure that the alt text and those other components are added at that account level, so that way it'll be able to transition over. One of the great things is hopefully that you saw out of today's presentation is a lot of the heavy lifting is actually done behind the scenes, and just with a couple of clicks there'll be things that you'll be responsible for that will be able to be transitioned over to your new events. Great question though.
Thank you, Ron. Is Cvent working to make all features of your products accessible, in particular the gamification and community aspects of VAH? That's Virtual Attendee Hub.
That is correct.
So we eventually we'll have VPATs and do accessibility testing and make all of our products accessible. Somebody actually asked a question in the chat. It was about the badge designer. So Eventually, all products will be reviewed. If somebody could give me large sums of money, I would contract TPGI and say, test everything all at once. We have to go by their availability and funds to test in all the products. So dozens of products. I'm sure a couple dozen, 3 dozen. We had to start with the really public-facing ones. So the registration, the attendee hub, the on arrival, webinar, and then we're moving to the others that don't have as much use. Some of them now, like the badge designer, we're working to give it good color contrast. We're working to make a keyboard accessible. Eventually, we'll get a VPAT. Some things, though, are inherently, for example, visual. So if you're designing a badge, it's assumed that you can see the badge to design it. So it may not ever work for somebody who's fully blind with a screen reader.
Yeah, I think one thing to also note, though, Stephen, about the question here, though, is that we do have VPATs already in place for the attendee hub. So those are some things to just kind of keep in mind. And if you are looking for a copy of the VPAT to be able to go through and see what components are going to be compliant and what are some of the things that are maybe listed as defects, we can easily go through and provide that to you. But within the attendee hub experience, we currently have VPATs for that along with the registration. So I just wanted to make sure that we also just got that part regarding gamification and the community answered as well.
Yeah, and with the VPATs, we got a list of problems that they found in the audit, and we still have an open backlog of things that we're actively working on fixing in Hub.
Great.
Very eye-opening. When will Cvent be pushing through the next set of accessibility updates to the website designers? Example, selecting radio buttons with the keyboard. So we actually want to offer an accessibility page. So some of what we do is we have to make our products accessible. Some of it is like a lot of the things we're doing here. We just want to make our users, the people who use our software, better at accessibility, even if it is outside of our products, like things like disability etiquette. We want to start an accessibility hub on our main page that has a lot of the stuff that I think you're talking about here. How a radio button should work when you use the keyboard. Natively, it should work with ours. It should just be if you pick radio buttons in our product, it'll work. But some things like, I don't know if you're doing color contrast or if you use a link versus a button, what kind of control you should use. Those things we want to have an accessibility hub just with overall guidance on our public website. It's already in the works, so kind of watch this space. This is the one about badges and certificates. Yeah, I kind of answered this one, but natively part of this, we will have a VPAD. It's in the queue. I think it's probably a next year one. I think we're already booked up for the entire rest of this year. We have, I mentioned a bunch coming out in June, a bunch coming out hopefully by the end of the year, January, depending on the auditing firm availability. Some of these things I want to do, and I mentioned like the badge designer again, natively it requires vision. So we do want to make it work with keyboard. We want to have good things like color contrast. Some things, though, we simply will not be able to make it. It's the inherent functionality of it. You have to have vision, so we won't make it. It won't be able to work with a screen reader. Is Cvent working to make the back end accessible too, so that a screen reader user could set up an event? Also, what about survey reports being accessible? Back end, yes, we had to focus on the front end first. I'll talk about back end, not just setting up an event, but also say an attendee. You have an attendee who's blind. We had at Cvent Connect last year. What the keynote speaker was blind. They have to be able to register using screen readers. We had to start with the public facing because it's just sheer numbers. We have millions and millions of users who use the main tools like the front end of registration, the front end of Attendee Hub. So eventually, yes, we will get to the back end, but we had to start with the front end first. For survey, I think survey, I'd have to open it up. I think that was included as one of the VPATs already.
I think what they're referring to is the back end of the survey reports where the reports are generated. So I think based off of Stephen's response, that would be included at a later time when we do transition over into the back end of the tool itself. These are all great questions. And one thing that I know that the product management would love is as you're going through and providing us this feedback, if you're also speaking with your Cvent account team, please make sure that you're relaying some of your concerns as well as feedback back to the team so they can take your exact use cases and provide that along to the team. So as we're evaluating and looking at ways to enhance the product, we'll be able to have kind of specific data to be able to hopefully include that in a later time. But hopefully this helps.
Can you recommend a database that is accessible for occupational therapy clinical services? Ooh, I wish billing and case management, I wish I could, I just don't know. And it's actually, I've been, for 22 years, I did contracting in the federal government, and the last 18 years was full accessibility. I never came across anything like this. I have to apologize. I just don't know.
Yeah, and one thing that you may want to consider if you are going to be a Cvent customer, we do have what we call our vendor marketplace. This was something that we developed earlier as a way for you to be able to go through and find those vendors, whether it's someone like an AV company, a ground transportation, or a catering company. And so, as we're going through and continuing to enhance the vendor marketplace, you may find that we have some of those things listed in there, and if we don't, this is a perfect opportunity for us to go through and expand our knowledge base and our database to include those things. So definitely trying to take a look at that vendor marketplace that's going to be accessible within your Cvent account. And you'll see a drop down that will allow for you, once you click on suppliers, to be able to go through and click on find vendors and take a look. And if it's not there, pass it along to your Cvent representative and we can look at possibly getting some of those things added.
Where can I find Cvent's VPATs or voluntary product accessibility templates? I mentioned that accessibility hub we're going to create on our public site. Eventually, they'll be there. For now, you'll have to go to your sales rep. If you don't, if you're a prospective customer, there's a help me out, Ron. I think it's on our public site. It says contact us, I think.
It does. So for Stephen is exactly correct. If you're an existing customer, please reach out to your Stephen account team. They'll be able to go through and provide you with our most up-to-date VPATs. As Stephen mentioned, we also have that customer-facing accessibility site where you'll be able to go through and contact us directly. This is information that we are willing to share with you and make sure that you have the latest and greatest. And of course, any additional inquiries can also be funneled through that channel as well. But that's all going to be available on our contact us customer facing accessibility site where we also have our accessibility statement.
And our VPATs, nobody asked, but VPATs are not static. The first round was done, I think last August or September, October, something like that. The goal is at least every year, we're going to update them. The updates for pulling out defects as we fix things, we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to pull the defects out. And we're hoping, I'd love it about every 2 years or with each major release. I think we need a couple years before we can start that. But I want to pay again that audit firm to re-audit our products. But first, we have to get through all the products the first time. So we're already working right now because it's what, 9 months, 8 or 9 months since we've had the VPATs. We're already working on registration and attendee hub web to have redone completely new ones by, let's say, August or September, something coming up like that. And we have fixed a significant number of defects. I think it's in a couple of hundred, like 200 defects we fixed or more. We've made pretty tremendous progress in the last, 8 or so months. For sign language, is it safe to assume that there is English sign language, Spanish, French, etc., or is it different? How do we know which one to use? So there are over 200 types of sign language. And there's even a British sign language. There's English sign language, there's British sign language. I don't know the differences. I bet they're different enough where somebody who speaks ASL or American Sign Language wouldn't understand British Sign Language. Which one to use? I would say go with, if you're in America, do ASL. If you're in Britain, do British Sign Language. Another huge plug. We showed this during the etiquette calls. Sorry, the disability etiquette slides. I want to do a push in this across the industry. Ask your users. Ask your users. Query when you're creating registration. We're very, very good about saying, here are 15 questions about your dietary needs for this event. We tend to say either we don't ask, do you need accommodations, or we ask a very generic, do you require accommodations, yes or no? So ask, do you require sign language interpreting? Do you require captions? If so, what language? That's the best way to find out. So that's my biggest push right now in the industry is we're going to start asking questions. We're going to ask our users what they need before these events because they're very happy to let us know. They're going to make them feel more welcome, and that'll increase participation by people with disabilities on these events. So. Will you be hosting a session at Cvent Connect? Thank you very much. If not, you should. Amazing call. I actually, during the 10-minute break, emailed them and said, I'm going to have a booth. We were going to do 3 to 4 like kind of informal screen reader demos. I asked if I can do a formal because I think if enough people want to see this, we'll try to do it. I don't know if they have enough time. It might already be added, but if not, come by my desk and I'll talk really, really loudly because Connect I hear is pretty insane, but we'll maybe we can just do it at the accessibility booth. And thank you very much for saying it's a call. I appreciate it.
You'll also be able to come to the Innovation Pavilion for those of you who have been to Connect in the past, even though we may not have a dedicated booth or table to accessibility, because this is largely affecting currently right now our event module. Any of our experts are going to be there to be able to go through and answer questions specifically about the tool. So while Stephen is very knowledgeable and can talk to you a lot about like the topic of accessibility and why it's important, and some suggestions, if you're looking to get into the back end, we'll certainly have some people there who can also be able to speak to you as well about this because we know it's a very important topic. So happy to hopefully see you all at Connect because I will also be there.
And I actually thank you, Ron. I did mention to the teams like Attendee Hub, registration on arrival to be prepared and ask me if there's any questions. For example, on arrival, I want them to have an on arrival tablet with a screen reader running. So you can come up and play with it to see what the experience would be like for one of your attendees who's fully blind. By the way, we've enabled it to make on arrival work with a screen reader because we do a lot, like I mentioned, that conference with Stevie Wonder. He needs to be able to register as a blind user. So it works as a fully blind user. And imagine at a conference, a disability conference with a bunch of on-arrival tablets and has a separate tablet running with a screen reader. So, oh, I see Mr. Wonder, you need a screen reader. Yes, I do. Go, tablet number 5 it has it running for you. Very cool. And they'll demo that at Connect. All right. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope you had as much fun watching it as I did presenting. I'm clearly passionate about accessibility, as everybody on the call. Be on the lookout for knowledge-based articles, blog posts, webinars. Hopefully our accessibility hub comes up here pretty soon. Reach out to your salespeople or contact us on cvent.com if you have questions. I hope to see you again at our accessibility booth at Connect 2023. I'm pretty excited. Again, based on your suggestions, I did ask to do a class. So on behalf of Ron, Evelyn, and Tim, I hope you have a wonderful Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Absolutely from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of my family's hearts, I thank you for your time. I thank you for helping us improve the lives of disabilities. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.